Live from Beit Shemesh and broadcasted around the world, you are listening to the From Entrepreneur Podcast with your host, Nahum Kligman. Interviews and advice from Jewish entrepreneurs from around the world. Listen, learn, be Matzliach.
Welcome to episode 25 of the From Entrepreneur. Today I have an incredible guest. You hear the term serial entrepreneur at times, and today I have someone who is the social serial entrepreneur, a term I coined for him, Chanan Kaufman. He is an unbelievable person who for 30 years has been creating and starting nonprofit organizations. I guarantee that everyone listening to this episode has heard of at least one of his organizations that he's founded. We're going to go through them. We're going to talk about it. He's had a tremendous impact on the world so far, and we're going to talk about a lot of these organizations. We're going to talk about NextDor, which is in his latest venture, his latest vision, of which I'm an integral part of that vision. So I'm very excited about that. And, Chanan, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Nahum.
It's, it's really unbelievable. First of all, I just want to tell people how we met because, we get asked that question a lot. And so just real quickly, a couple of years ago, probably like 4 years ago or so, Chanan contacted me out of nowhere. I used to be in the domain name space, buying and selling domain names. And, at one point I had hundreds and hundreds of domain names. And one of them I had was JerusalemAngels.com. And this guy, Chanan, emails me, hey, are you using JerusalemAngels.com? If not, can I have it? I see you're not using it. Can I? So anyway, to make a long story short, I called him and we started talking. He said, yeah, he's doing he's associated with Aish Torah and he has a vision how he's going to use the domain name. And I said, you know what? If you're going to use it for something good, something for Klal Yisrael, you could just have the domain name. And he was very grateful. And since then, this is probably about 4 years ago or so. Since that point, we've kept in contact over the years. And, from time to time, we'll just let each other know, what we're up to, how we're doing. And I always figured that, at some point in the future, we're going to do something together.
That's a good example of you did something altruistic and, giving us the name was very nice. It was a really nice thing. I didn't pay anything. I thought it was a really great name. I think,
right.
Well, I got a great deal here. But it turns out that was the precursor for what we're working on together. NextDor.
That's true. And we're going to get to NextDor. But first, Chanan, I always try to give people a little bit of a background. You know what? Let's talk first before we get background. Let's talk about some of your organizations, just in name. Then we'll dig in then we'll go back to, a little bit about your background. Then we'll, circle back to some of these organizations and how they got started. Bizrael, GoInspire, Jerusalem Fellowships, Aish, New York. Yeah, a lot of these, I don't know if you started, you're founded, but, Jewel. Right? You were associated with Aish Torah for 30 years or so?
35 years.
35 years.
I'm getting older.
You are getting older.
I've gotten older.
You're getting older, but you're not slowing down, which is unbelievable.
Okay.
So, first of all, where did you grow up? Where were you born? Where were you raised?
I'm from Fair Lawn, New Jersey.
All right. That's also funny. We think of Fair Lawn,
New Jersey.
Right? Because I'm from Passaic, but
right.
You're a little bit older than me, just a couple of years.
Yeah.
And, but you didn't grow up from, correct?
No, I didn't grow up from Fair Lawn. I'm a nice third generation American Jew. Went to college, and then after college, went to Israel just as a part of a Europe trip, traveling around. And I bumped into a couple of different people along my way who went to high school. I went to high school with from Fair Lawn, and one of them was taking some courses at Aish Torah. And
this is in the 70s.
This is in March 1980.
Oh, March 1980, okay.
Yeah. And then, we came in there and, we studied. We had Rabbi Noah Weinberg, who was my Rosh Hashiva, and we had all, Rabbi Pliskin and all great students there, and it was a whole gang. And this was, this is the beginning, or the early stages of the rapid growth of Aish Torah. And I came in there in 1980. So it was a very exciting time and, changed my life.
So you became through Aish.
Yeah.
Right. And you were on this trip and you decided to stay there? Or?
Yeah. Instead of going to kibbutz, I stayed at Aish for a little while, took some classes, then I traveled around, then I came back and traveled around, and we were doing the 48 ways, Rav Noah Weinberg.
Right, famous 48 ways. Sure.
And we had Reb Zelek Pliskin as a teacher there with the 40 ways. He did half of it, and it was a great group of people. If I listed up some of the names of the people, these are some of my friends and associates and co-travelers through Aish Torah in those early years are, major people. In terms of the Jewish world, and they've done tremendous stuff, and it was a lot of fun.
Awesome. Like who was in that class back then?
So a lot of people. I start with, who? I don't know, Ephraim Shore, and Raphael Shore, and Eric Coopersmith, and Nehemiah Kupis, there's the brothers, and we had Ken Spiro, and we had back Nachum Braverman and Tom Myers and Erwin Katzoff and Yaakov Palatnik and Steve Bars and Rich Mandel. I mean, all the people who built Aish Torah. We were together at Aish Torah, and then we went on to do things.
It's incredible because, I mean, I recognize a lot of these names, and a lot of them have done tremendous stuff for Klal Yisrael, and especially in the Kiruv world.
That's what we're about.
So, how did you go from student to more involvement?
I mean, look, Rav Noach, what got us involved, and he gave us a lot of opportunity to take responsibility and to innovate and try things. So it was a very activist-oriented environment. It was a place with a mission. We had all understood the importance of Kiruv. We were people who benefited from it directly, tremendously. And Rav Noach was a great leader, and he attracted very quality people around him. And, we knew the potential, and we knew that we had to share our experiences, and that other people like us would really benefit from what we're doing. And there was no question about that. We had a tremendous product, let's say, and a movement to create. And so we just went out and did it.
And so what was like your first movement? What was the first thing that you did out of or from Aish? I guess Aish was a foundation. And
yeah. So Israel, so I was a student, but I was sort of worked a little bit when I was there. I did stuff with UJA groups coming in. I get them to spend Shabbat with us. I saw that they weren't doing anything for Shabbat.
Right.
And we have a lot of groups came. It was really great. And I worked, in the beginners program. I took a lot of different positions in Aish Torah in Jerusalem. And a lot of, as a young person, as a novice to Judaism. I was a year and a half, whatever. And I had very, very big responsibilities. It was quite controversial. And my friends as well. We took on big responsibilities, and we didn't have the many, many years of yeshiva and the long beards. And that was controversial. The rabbis didn't know how to do it, but we knew the young people coming in, and we knew how to handle them, and we were
right,
capable
because you were them.
We were them, and there was, logistical aspects as well of it. But we had a lot of energy, and we knew the market, we knew the people, and we were good at it. It was great. Rav Noach believed in that. He very much was a big promoter of that.
When did you get smicha?
In 1985.
Oh, so early. I mean, this is as you're growing.
I was a student. I learned at Aish in Jerusalem for 5.5 years. I met my wife there, Shari. We got married. We had our first child, and then we were off to start Aish Torah in New York, the branch of Aish Torah in New York. Aish Torah did not have a branch in New York, even though Rav Noach was coming there quite often. It was, right. It was a place where he was always going. And we had Aish had a branch in Toronto.
Right. That was what was the first branch?
The first branch was in St. Louis. It was Chaim Willis, Rabbi Chaim Willis, Rabbi Kalman Packhouse. Rabbi Chaim Willis was the Ellen Willis's brother. She did his famous Rolling Stone article in the 70s on Rabbi Chaim Willis. Unbelievable article. Great article. And she was one of the godmothers of the women's lib movement. She came and wrote this article, but it was a great article. And so he was out in St. Louis, and then you had Los Angeles. You had Erwin Katzoff and Nachum Braverman in St. Louis with Dick Horowitz, and you had the five guys. Baruch Benes was one of them, and
Baruch I know from Pesach.
Yeah, but they were in Toronto, and I went and trained in fundraising to get shimush, as it were, experience in Los Angeles with Erwin Katzoff, Nachum Braverman, and Dick Horowitz, and we spent about 7 months out there.
Wow.
And then I came back and I started in New York. And New York was the first branch of Aish Torah. New York was a tough town. There was a little bit of Kiruv going on in New York.
One of my business associates, Eli Mondro, he worked or volunteered at Aish New York for a little bit.
It was probably after my time.
Yeah.
So from 1986, and I came out and I started the first branch of Aish Torah that didn't have a lay leader to carry it. Who didn't start it. It wasn't started by a lay person.
Mm-hmm.
So I came in. It was an interesting experience, and I did that till 1992, I think. And I handed it off to a guy named Rabbi Yitz Greenman, who really did an amazing job.
Right.
And took it to great heights, and that's a different story. It's a fantastic story. And then I went on to take over or create an organization based on a program. The organization is called Jerusalem Fellowships. And I turned it into an organization in 1991, basically. It was a program that was very innovative, that was created in 1985 to bring secular college and young professionals to Israel on a 3-part program of connecting to their Jewish identity through, Aish Torah's really expertise in doing that.
Right.
Wisdom for living, making it relevant for their lives. 2 was the geopolitics. We didn't call it Hasbara back then. We called it geopolitics.
Right.
In the mid-'80s. And they would meet with Israel. Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan was an honorary chairman.
Oh, wow.
And so it was Arlen Specter, senator of Pennsylvania.
Sure.
And President Chaim Herzog. in Israel.
Wow.
And Moynihan really got all these people involved, and he would get all the top political leaders to meet with our students, a bunch of college students, and they would meet with them.
Wow.
So we'd go to the Knesset, the president's house, or whatever, and so we learned about the current events from the people making it happen.
Wow.
And then we travel the country, travel around the land of Israel, and really get into it, a lot of outdoorsy stuff, hiking, all kinds of cool stuff. And this was a fantastic program, and it attracted totally secular people. We were basically saying, like, what would it take to get me to come to Aish Torah if I didn't stumble on it while I was backpacking through Jerusalem?
Right.
We needed, a more systematic way of bringing people in. We just couldn't rely just on Mayor Schuster. So
that's
and that's what we did, and it was amazing. The first trip they had, I was tangentially involved. I wasn't that involved with it, but I was, these are my Ephraim Shore was the big player with this, and Eric and all these guys. And they had the first trip. It was in 1985, and there were all kinds of people. Lori Palatnik was on that first trip.
Oh wow!
My next door neighbor Ken Marvette here in Muncie, he was on that. A lot of people who found their Yiddishkeit and became great families, and they went on to contribute to the Jewish communities in a big way. And it was like it had this tremendous deficit. It went over budget terribly.
Right.
Rav Noach was very upset, but it was really an amazing thing. And then they had a couple more programs, and it was kind of died out. Nobody really took it. And I was looking for it. It was shifting from Aish, New York. I didn't live in Manhattan. I was looking to make a change. So I told them I will do the recruiting, the fundraising, bring the students, give me someone to work with. And I started working with Rabbi Chaim Willis. We started doing trips. And from that point on, over the years, we grew it. Mm-hmm. We grew it a lot. And it's expanded out into England, and England took on their own version of it after a while. And then we started putting rabbis and outreach families on campuses to do kiruv. There was very little kiruv going on campuses.
This is before. This is. I mean, when did the Hill? This is in association with Hill Houses, or Chabad was on campus, or was this like a totally new?
Both. There was Chabad didn't have that much stuff going on campus. They probably had more than Aish Torah. Aish Torah originally was focused on campuses. I mean, originally back in the early 80s. Mm-hmm. And as they got a little older, they found it more sustainable and more relatable and have certain better efficacies in certain ways with young professionals. And it stayed with young professionals and adults throughout North America. And they got away from college campuses. So it was hard to do college campuses because the funding wasn't there on the campuses. You had to bring it from outside.
Right.
So it was hard to sustain. But we worked very hard, and we opened up campuses and did stuff in University of Maryland and College Park and Rutgers, Penn State to some degree. We had a bunch of guys, a whole team out in Boston with Tzvi Gluck, under the Goddard leadership of Tzvi Gluckin, and some of that stuff's still going on with in Boston.
Well, now 35 years later, how have the people have you have any success stories? I saw that you've had some success stories from these early campus programs.
Well, there was campus programs and there was community programs, and we were the front line for kiruv, and we shifted it over so that we would have more on the ground young adult and college kiruv initiatives using the Israel trip to facilitate them. I used to call it built-in follow-up. Instead of us, bringing them and then sending them back, and wherever they ended up, we changed that model and we made it so we built local efforts. So the local efforts used the Israel trip as a powerful tool. Right. And we built that up. And then Birthright came along 15 years after the Jerusalem Fellowships began.
Wow.
So I know that they've told me, some of the people who were honest with us, told us that that the Jerusalem Fellowships was something they looked at very closely, and it was an inspiration and model for them at some level.
Wow.
Of course, we're a little bit more religious than these guys,
Right.
We had a different kind of content, agenda, and mission, as it were. And Birthright came along, and I went to them and said, guys, we have to be part of Birthright. And we became part of Birthright. And Chabad also became part of Birthright. It was a big deal for them. They were not involved in Israel trips at all.
Right.
I mean, they were, but it was a much smaller scale than we were.
Okay.
And they started doing big time with them. And it was an interesting time because all of a sudden, now there were a lot of people, and this is really off the topic here, but, it's...
No, that's great. This is great stuff.
That a lot of students wanted to go into Birthright in the beginning, and they couldn't get on. So we had a sudden big flow for all our programs, and it was very interesting. And at that time, Rav Noach started having discussions with a man named Reb Zev Wolfson, Alav Shalom Tzatzal.
Wow.
Who was a major philanthropist, one of, probably the biggest philanthropist in kiruv in the world.
Wow.
That I know of, definitely up there. And also, he was, a very big philanthropist, a very special person. He also raised more money for the state of Israel, in defense of Israel and so on, from the United States government than any individual person I've ever heard of who wasn't, a president, like his second to AIPAC.
Wow.
It's like he's the next one down the list.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. So he got together with Noach, and they never, for some reason, they always sort of danced around with each other, and they couldn't see eye to eye, and they had strong wills. And Zev realized that, it's ridiculous that I'm not doing stuff with Aish Torah, because most of the things I do stuff for are, been inspired by Aish Torah, was started by people from Aish Torah. It doesn't make sense. And we were doing great stuff back in those days. So Zev said, Noah called me up one day and said, Chanan, I raised you $1 million.
That's what he said. He just
Called me out of the blue. And that was very out of character, because Rav Noach was always raising money for his tremendous overhead in Israel.
Sure.
Plus, he always had new projects, things that he wanted to do. So he left the fundraising with the Jerusalem Fellowships to us. But he called up and I said, Rebbe, you've got my attention. He said, yeah, Zev Wilson's ready to write a check to Aish Torah, and he wants to put rabbis, outreach professionals, rabbis on campuses, and bring the college students to Israel on Kiruv trips. You do that, right? And I said, yeah,
we do.
That's what we do. So I started working with Zev Wilson, Baruch Hashem, back then. And at that point, that's when I got involved with Jewel, because I figured that Zev wanted, results quicker.
Right.
And the fellowships is like frontline Kiruv. It takes a little co-ed trips. It takes a little while for them to cook.
Right.
Whereas we had our follow-up programs, which were Jewel,
the women's Aish Torah program,
Mechina programs, women's Mechina program. It's we've always sort of affiliated with Aish on some level, but it's independent. And it was started by the Beretsky's, who were employees of mine. And they worked for me for the fellowships, and they saw the need for this, so we supported them in starting Jewel, which was a very important thing. It was an alternative to Neve Yerushalayim's Mechina program. And I called them up and said, Josh, I think that we're going to get a lot of money from Mr. Wilson to offer scholarships for the first time, that we will be recruiting directly for a Mechina program, a non-co-ed program. It's the first time. So that meant, it was a big breakthrough, because we had so many people. I figured we'd take Mr. Wilson's scholarships and apply for that. That's the proposal I gave him.
Right.
So at that time, Josh said, I'm leaving Jewel and I'm going to work for Rabbi Berkowitz, which was a wonderful thing. But I said, we're about to blow Jewel out off the roof.
Right.
We grow fivefold. Hello. So that was when Jewel sort of fell into my lap.
Okay.
And, there were great people working there and doing this stuff and being responsible and running stuff. But we did the recruiting then, and we did the scholarships, and we started sending directly to Jewel and Essentials, which is Aish Torah's beginners program in Jerusalem. So we started that, and that became a big deal. And Jewel was a part of our operation for many years. And we still send students there, and we do still scholarships and get them over there. We have a staff person here that does that, and we have a bit of a budget for that. We're still doing scholarships, sending to Jewel and Essentials. So we got that. So we had Birthright, a Jerusalem Fellowships program, Jewel, Jerusalem Fellowships, and it started to grow. And, and then we're working with the Wilsons, with Elliot Matthias, started around that time, Hasbara Fellowships, which was a division of Aish Jerusalem Fellowships. I mean, he built it up. He and Ephraim Shore built it up very well. And Elliot did an amazing job training people in Israel to do advocacy. They would bring, people who were passionate. This is back during the Intifada in the early 2000s at a very bad stage, and people were outraged by what the Arab students, Palestinian students, and so on, Muslim students on campus were presenting to their students, with their PR campaigns, everything. That was when
there was a war in Israel, and there was a war in the States also.
That's right. On the campuses, that is the front line, still is. And the response, the Jewish community had basically, the organized Jewish community in terms of activism died for when Soviet Jewry no longer became an issue. When there was Glasnost and Soviet Union opened up in the late 80s and the 90s. Right. So that ended, 15, 20 years worth of Soviet Jewry activism.
Right. Yeah, I remember marching in Washington myself as a youngster going, for Soviet Jewry. And
yeah, it was a big deal.
Right.
And then it ended. And so the campus, there was no cause. There was nothing going on. And the Palestinians were at it. And Saudi Arabia and all these places put tons of money into campuses. They still do. But on the academic level, on the professor level, and on the student level, professional students to come in and try to change the whole attitude. But they're very smart about it.
Right.
And we were flat-footed, and here was the Intifada. So that was when several different significant initiatives started for Israel advocacy and Hasbara. And one of them was actually the foreign ministry came to Aish Torah and said, look, because of the Jerusalem fellowships, all the geopolitical stuff that you do and the great student leaders that we've met, we know your kids, could you guys do something on campus to change this thing? Could we get, do activism? So Elliot and Ephraim got up and did it, and that was a part of the Jerusalem Fellowships also, because we always had an aspect of Hasbara.
Mm-hmm.
So this when we specialized. So what we did is we had the Hasbara, Jewish learning, and seeing the whole country and really engaging into the country in terms of volunteers, in terms of traveling, all that experience. So then what we did is we started doing Jewel Essentials, more Torah learning, less travel, less Israel advocacy. And Hasbara became more Israel advocacy and less touring and less Judaism. And the Jerusalem Fellowships was the balance. And then we would shift it depending on the groups and the campuses that we were working with. So that happened. And then, so we started building with the Wolfsons. They invested a great deal in helping to put staff people on campuses, and we worked out deals with them and percentage and so on. And we went around to all the branches of Aish Torah and said to them, look, guys, we want you to get into college care. We'll you for 1/3 of the cost, you can do the Israel trips. We'll cover 2/3. Wilson will cover 1/3. My donors will cover 1/3. Our fellowship donors,
right?
And you guys can get money from the participants, and you can add some money. And between the three of us, we can really wrap it up. Bring people, and we can get you a proportion of your salaries for your new Kiruv professionals who are on campus.
Now,
so we got him into it, and I worked with Elliot on that, and Raphael Shore worked with that, and Eric Coopersmith and I worked on that for a while, and we built it up. It was Aish Campus. So now we all of a sudden have a bunch of new places, and so places that are recruiting, and we're doing more trips.
Did Ner Elif also did campuses, or they're just communities?
Well, Ner Elif is a training program in Israel, so they're not actually.
But they're training. But they're training people to go into campuses.
They're training people to go Kiruv in communities.
Oh, in communities, okay.
So those are others as well. And then there were other groups that started to open up. Some individual practitioners would start their own campuses, and then Maor got into it. That's part from Malcolm Shlomo, Rabbi Rosenberg. Their group and their people and their board decided they wanted to invest, and they went and offered some money and helped hire some people on campuses. They brought other people out, and they started the Israel trips. And Chabad grew during that time as well. So there's because of the Wolfsons and others, there is a tremendous amount of stuff going on campus, Kiruv trips, and many, many more trips. And we played a critical role. And at one point, I went to the Wolfsons in, mid-2000s to suggest a campaign to have 10,000, Jerusalem, I called it Jerusalem 10,000, have 10,000 young adults come to Israel that was going through Aish. That was our piece over 4 years. And we brought them from South America. We brought Sephardic kids from North America. We brought people from South Africa, Australia, some from England a little bit, not so much then. And we did all kinds of trips and individual students to go study. And we did it. In 4 years, we had 10,000 students. And it was great. It was really a great campaign, and that was it. But something interesting happened along the way.
Yeah.
And what happened to me, which brings us to where we are today, is that in 2008, we were 3/4 into our Jerusalem 10,000 campaign or more.
Right.
We raised, with Harvey Hecker, who's the president of Aish Torah, a couple of the board members, and our supporters here at Jerusalem Fellowships came together and came up with 1/3 of the funding. And the Wolfson group came up with 1/3 of the funding. And then the communities and the participants paid the other third. And it was a fair amount of money. And we lost a lot of our funding. They walked away in 2008. It was terrible economic times. And that
Who walked away?
Some of our funders. But half of our
not Wolfson, but you're saying
but it was half of the money that I was raising, which is 1/3 of the overall budget, which is a fair amount of money. I don't really want to say what it was.
Right.
It's we're in the 7 figures. Half that our expected, committed, spent money did not come in 2000 by the end of 2008.
Wow.
And that created a crisis. We were overextended. I had a lot of things going on. That was a challenge. Jewels overhead, doing stuff with the essentials. I had some campuses in Boston and other places. And we had many trips, and we were a little bit aggressive, and it showed a weakness in our financial models, but it was also unexpected. So everybody got hit then.
Right.
So by the time I got into 2009, we realized that we were $1.5 million in the hole.
Wow. And that fell on your shoulders?
Yeah.
You've fell into a $1.5 million hole.
Yeah.
And you got out of it?
Baruch Hashem. Took about 5 years.
Right.
But no, thank God. It was amazing. I would say it was one of the best things that ever happened to my life in terms of my career, and one of the best things.
Wait. Going $1.5 million into debt and putting that on your shoulders was one of the best things that happened to you in your career?
Yes.
Please explain that.
Because it caused me, first of all, I was probably 50 years old, and I said like this, that's it. I'm never going to be in debt again. I don't want to do it. And that's it, number one. So that meant that I have to change the way I did business,
Right?
Because I had been in debt many times, just not that much.
Right.
And it was enough. It was just too stressful. And it didn't make sense. And there were certain decisions that I made that turned out to be very good and brought me to another track and understanding that brings us to the next stage of what I would say is my entire career.
Okay.
Right? Because my career till then was, a lot of Kiruv, a lot of front direct Kiruv and Aish branches. And of course, the Israel trip that, we were innovators, we were leaders in what we call the transformational Israel trip. That means creating a trip to Israel that's going to change people's lives.
Right.
And, we're definitely leaders in that. And I had fortunate to work with tremendous people and to see it firsthand and be a part of that. So it was very exciting. Now, broke, what are we going to do? And what was interesting is that during that time that drew some 10,000, as we scaled up, we had so many more people going. So we ended up taking a very business and logistical sort of tasks fell into our hand. We were working, we went directly with the airlines, started working with El Al as a nonprofit, through some fellowships.
Right.
And dealing with, getting tickets and the groups and helping all these different groups to get to Israel. I mean, it's no small thing getting them on planes and dealing with the expenses and the reservations and the groups and so on. And we were doing this for thousands of people. And then
plus programming?
No, that's just on this side. And also the finances, we get the money from Wolfsons and we help the rabbis figure out how many people are going to get and how much money they have to come up with and how the students are going to pay and all the registration, tons and tons of logistical stuff. And we were putting money in and we were dealing with the money aspects of it as well. And then in Israel, we had a really good staff led by a guy named Shmuel Kanreich, who built a tremendous team. And our offices ended up being in the new building of Aish Torah when they finally built that. And we were running most of the programming for the incoming people from abroad to Aish Torah. And it was an independent staff that's part of the Jerusalem Fellowships.
Okay.
That worked for me and worked for us. And Shmuel Kanreich was the manager and really did a great job. And it was fantastic. And I said, I really feel bad about dismantling what we built because it's a tremendous overhead. It's $1 million overhead and I'm $1.5 million in the hole. And what am I going to do? We can't, it doesn't make sense. And nobody's got money now.
Right.
Everybody's broke. This is beginning of 2009.
Right.
So I had this epiphany to create a for-profit travel company that will basically do the same things that we do. In other words, do trips. Maybe we can do bar mitzvah trips and other things. But we had all the infrastructure for Israel travel,
right,
including the flights and putting together. And we really have the knowledge and the ability and the logistics.
And the experience. I mean, we've been doing this for 20 years at that point. Right, since 85.
Yeah, we've done it many years, but we really, our team was, some of the people, it's true, some of the people, 2005, so we had 20 years, almost, of solid experience. Some of the people were had been here for 15 years and so on. And, so we did it. And that was a very interesting move. And at that time,
what'd you call it?
We called it GoInspire.
GoInspire.
Because it's more than just an Israel travel tour company, that we do content and we make these Kiruv trips, these Hasbara trips, and very engaging, and we do much more than a typical travel company in Israel because we do the education. So we organize that, we put it together, and we know about it. We come from the Kiruv and the Hasbara background, but now we're all logistics. So now we're offering this to the greater world. So a lot of the organizations that we created and got the funding for and partnered with all these years, they ended up being our clients.
Interesting.
They were clients before anyway. We treated them that way.
Right.
And so we were customizing, doing trips for them, and we continued. And then the Wolfsons stepped up, and they got the Israeli government involved so that there was more money coming in for the trips. So since a lot of the local organizations didn't have money, and we didn't, obviously, anymore.
Right.
So, and it's grown. So we continued. Now, that was a very interesting experience, Nachum. The experience, I mean, is that, first of all, going broke. Second of all, starting a for-profit with the same people who were working in a Jewish nonprofit prior. And these people, it took a period of time, but we spun out most of the staff to be employees for the GoInspire and to work on the travel side.
Interesting.
What I noticed was there was a paradigm shift. This was fascinating to me. The same people doing the same thing, basically, but they looked at it differently. And they became much more professional. They became much more focused on the bottom line. And it didn't take away from people's idealism. I don't believe it did at all. Mm-hmm. I think it enhanced their idealism. And it made them much more professional. And, people just took on roles. And it just really changed. And I was like, look at that. And I saw changes in myself as well, but it was amazing. Number one. Number two was it created a sustainable model. In other words, we were able to do the same thing. Not the same thing. We were able to do much more professionally, better, more effectively. And I didn't have to raise the salary of every employee every month.
Because now it's a for-profit company.
Because it was a for-profit company, and they were sustaining themselves. The money was good. Now we were making a bit of a profit, enough to start whittling down our humongous deficit.
So that's how you paid off the debt.
That was how we paid off most of the debt, I would say.
That's an incredible story. GoInspire, is an inspiring story.
Well, thank you. It was
innovative. You get that's really
from Hashem. To this day, I do not know how we survived 2009 and half of 2010. We were I can't even, it was unbelievable. And there were people like Bela Groner who just carried it so well, and Shmuel. And these guys, they work so hard. Everybody works. It's not an easy job. These guys worked really, really, really hard.
Right.
And they built it into a really solid organization. And it's an envious group. What people should envy about us is the team, is how well they work together and how much, they can accomplish and what good work they do. And that to me is number one. That's the most valuable thing. And we went on from there it did a major change for me because now I wasn't burdened by the cash flow.
Right.
And for the first time in my life, because I didn't have a solid financial business model for all the work I did with Aish in New York and Jerusalem Fellowships and all that stuff. I was always under duress. I never had a dime in the bank. Nobody taught me that. That wasn't what I learned in my training, and that wasn't the Rev Noach's approach and so on. And it created we did a lot, Baruch Hashem, but it wasn't easy.
Right.
It was a hard way to do it. And now I was freed up, and I was excited the fact that we were building something and creating it. And I started to read books like the E-Myth and all this other stuff and learn about business. And it was a very interesting thing for me. So in addition to creating a sustainable model, it freed me up and it allowed me to become much more sort of entrepreneurial, which I always was. But
you didn't realize it.
But I didn't realize there was a name for it, and I didn't realize that starting companies and taking a vision and putting it together and creating something new was something that I could do that on a concerted, regular basis.
So interesting. So talk to me.
So we did. So we started. So Howard Sterling, my friend Howard, came to me and said, Chanan, we got to use your travel company. We got to bring investors to Israel because they won't get it. They won't get it until they go and see the depth of the quality of the intellectual
investors.
property.
We mean in high tech, or
the high tech scene, the startup nation. He said, Chanan, did you read the book? I said, what book? He said, The Startup Nation, The Miracle of Israel's Economic Development.
Right.
And so I read it, and I was like, that's a cool book. This is a great book.
Right.
Everybody has to read it.
Sure, I read it, of course.
Okay, I'm sure anybody's listening to this blog has read it, but if you haven't, read it.
Chanan, podcast.
Yeah. Podcast. Got it. And so we started doing that. And he connected me with some of his friends. Howard was very involved in early IPOs in the 80s, which was quite early. So his friends were some of the leading business people in the state of Israel in the high-tech industries. So he got me together with the Zisapels and who else? The Zisapel brothers from Rad Group.
I'm not familiar with them. But
well, this is Israel. It's high tech. I thought you knew about these things.
Oh, from Rad.
Yeah,
okay.
Okay. You never heard of the Zisapel brothers? He got me together with a lot of major players. And I went there, and I went to them, and I discovered what I already saw in the political arena and in the, with the army and with the Jewish outreach, that they're another avenue and another very receptive group of people who will meet with young adults or adults and tell them what Israel's up to and doing. And it's another entry point to make a transformational trip. So we started doing investors to Israel. We created a company called Israel High Tech Ventures, IHTV.
Wow.
And we brought a number of groups, some serious biotech stuff, and it was a lot of fun. It was hard to build it up as a travel thing because they're very, very small groups, hard to get them.
Right. It's in areas probably all investors are itineraries, their schedules are probably different than everyone else's.
Yeah, they're short trips. There
Try
are
and
a
get
few
them all.
people. But,
Right.
So it's a travel thing. It didn't make sense. So I thought it might. But it was interesting to me. And I loved it. Loved it. It was really cool. I mean,
Sure.
we just saw, really inside viewpoint of phenomenal innovation, phenomenal stories. It was just a whole new, and I love the science as well. I'm into science. So we did that. And then I realized that, why don't we bring business students to Israel?
Huh.
Because these are people who will have influence as they grow
and
business
graduate,
people.
right?
These are people who can economically be engaged in Israel, whether and if Jews or non-Jews. And if they're Jewish, this is a great way to connect sort of business-oriented young people with their homeland and perhaps their heritage. And it's a wonderful narrative for advocacy for Israel.
So that's Bizrael.
So we created in 2012, started Bizrael, 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 business students connecting to the entrepreneurial and the startup tech scene in Israel. And it was a big hit. We took several trips. We worked with the Wolfsons. They were happy to do some trips. We did about 4 or 5 with them.
Right.
It was Kiruv.
Well, for this, from
business.
specific business schools that you're bringing kids,
They
or
were
city-based?
No, they were mostly. There was a mixture of of undergraduates and grad students. They were Jewish trips. We did a bunch of those. Then we started Bizrael with Birthright. So we have one of the niche trips. There's a Bizrael Birthright trip.
Wow.
Israel Free Spirit. We had then recently we started sort of outsourcing or making available our services for groups that are coming or in Israel already. So today, our timing with Bizrael was very interesting. It's a whole story in itself in terms of stuff that's
But Bizrael's a
on campuses.
nonprofit, correct?
Israel's a nonprofit. Israel Tech Ventures is a for-profit. GoInspire is a for-profit, and Jerusalem Fellowships is is the original nonprofit we had here.
Right.
Those are 4 companies. We have a company in Israel as well for GoInspire. And Bizrael has really taken off. This year, we had about 600 participants.
Wow.
In our programs. And the reason the numbers got so high is because there's a real movement for internships in Israel. Instead of people going to kibbutz, to have an experience in Israel, they come and they get an internship in a high-tech job or all kinds of things.
Oh, that's amazing. That's great.
And there's a bunch of initiatives that are doing that. Some for Kiruv, some for Zionism, some communities coming in, the Jewish agencies involved. It's just, since we started in 2012, that time, it just took off. So we were part of growing that ecosystem, and we focus on doing the short trip, where we really, really, in a very engaging way, connect young adults, business people with really cutting-edge companies and global companies and the whole scene. And so we do some really phenomenal experiences because there's so many things to connect them with. And
Sure.
There's different groups and clubs and peers and all kinds of stuff that we're connected with. We really have been very fortunate. And this is unique, by the way. Bizrael is the only organization in Israel that does this, where we bring in groups and we focus on the overview and the engagement and the educational side of connecting young adults with the whole business scene. So as far as I know, we're the only group that's all we do. And this year, since there's so many internships going on, that the groups get their students together to do 1 or 2 day programming, and they want to use Bizrael to come in and run that programming because they realize they can't do it so easily, and we're really, really good at it.
Wow.
So we do those. So we worked with about 8 or 9 new organizations on about 15, 16 trips, 1-dayers in 2015. And it was, the results were fantastic. They all coming back, and they want to have more and more. So we're really
beautiful
looking to scale that up you and I were talking about putting together more of a team there to build it up because, it's getting hard to handle hundreds of people.
Right.
That's going. And GoInspire also, I forgot to mention, that in 2009, a friend of ours called us up, Lori Rebbitzin Lori Palatnik called us up and said,
I know her brother, Randy Zeltzer.
There you go.
From Beit Shemesh.
And most of your listeners probably know who Lori Palatnik is. If they don't,
Yeah.
you should Google her and listen to her blog. She calls it a blog. Her almost live.
She has a
video blog.
Audio show? Oh, a video blog.
It's almost live. And Lori was launching a new organization called the JWRP, Jewish Women's Renaissance Project. And she always had a passion about bringing Jewish moms to Israel and turning them on to Judaism and bringing them home. And the transformational Israel trip, Lori was a graduate of the Jerusalem Fellowship, so she understood it very, very well. And she came to us and said, Chanan, you guys are perfect for us. Low cost, customized trips, do all the education, Shabbos, one-to-one learning, the whole works. This will be fantastic. Let's work together. So the first year she had 300 women. That was the beginning of JBRP.
Wow.
Fast forward from 2009 to 2015, it's up over 6,000 women.
6,000 women a year?
No,
you mean total?
She's holding about 2,000 and growing.
Wow.
They do a few men, also a few hundred men, but it's all women. The birthright for moms, and they've built a whole worldwide movement. And the Israeli government is partnering with them, and they're growing. They're in a big growth, and we're their partners. We're their exclusive partners on all the Israel trips, and we do a lot of their flights here also. But we do everything in Israel. And as a matter of fact, right now, under these circumstances where the Israelis are being attacked, and we're going through a terrible time with our Arab cousins here, they just sent this week 360 women out of a proposed 400. So 40 women canceled, and they went.
Only 40. Wow.
And we had to make all kinds of security arrangements and everything.
Sure.
And it was very, very difficult. But they're there now, please God, and they should do well. And they're planning going strong. They also went last summer in the middle of the Gaza war and so on. And
right.
It's a phenomenal. It's one of the largest, most significant Kiruv initiatives going on in the world.
Beautiful.
And we're very proud to be the logistical partners, real partners with JWRP.
Now, GoInspire, I mean, they do, if I wanted to, or somebody wanted to plan a family trip or bar mitzvah, or they wanted to get a group of people together in their community, or a shul wants to go to on a trip, so they just call GoInspire, and you guys arrange everything soup to nuts for them?
Right. And you're not going to charge me for this advertisement, are you? No.
This is not an advertisement. This is an incredible entrepreneurial story.
But the answer is yes. I want to say that yes, out there, we do all types of trips.
Wow, that's incredible.
And we do special family trips and bar mitzvah trips. But the beauty of it is the real power of what we offer, and which I think that we need to build up, is that for 95% or 90% of all the trips that we do are subsidized trips, that the people are paying only a portion, maybe airfare or less, right, for their trip. The women on JWRP, the students are going on all the Kira programs, the campus programs, and the Wolfson programs. They're paying a fraction. And they're being turned on. Their lives are changing. I believe that there's a market out there that we just have to tap, and we have it out there, and we just have to learn how to tap it. It's a little more sophisticated, that there should be one full paying customer for every subsidized customer. So if we're bringing 3,000-4,000 people a year, then there should be that many people coming who are paying $3,000, $3,500 because people travel, they go places,
right,
they're looking for experiences, and we have it. And we can recreate very similar paying experiences, and that we're not doing yet. And that's our next thing. That's one of our, Bizrael's growing in its way. GoInspire has to go. Bizrael will do that as well. And GoInspire has to develop that. That's very important. So that we believe there's a very big market out there, and there's at least as many people willing to pay to come as those who are not paying to come.
Amazing. Chanan, I got to tell you, there's actually going to be a first. I haven't done this yet, but, we're going to do this interview in two parts because you're already, almost 45 minutes in, and we didn't even touch yet your latest vision, your latest idea, NextDor, which, I'm obviously super excited about. So we're actually going to do a part 2, and we'll have to release it at a separate time. But your story is overwhelming. It's exciting. Your history. I mean, you just went through like 30 years of Kiruv history and Israel trips, in 45 minutes.
If you do something long enough, you can actually have a history, 30 years. It's a long time.
Long time.
Yes.
But thank you so much for being on the show and doing this first part. And, we're going to record the second part and we'll get it out there. But thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Nachum. It's a pleasure, a privilege.
Thank you for listening to the From Entrepreneur Podcast with Nachum Kligman. We hope you learned something valuable, and we'll share this with your friends. For show notes, archives of previous episodes, and more information to help you start and grow your business, please visit our website, www.FromEntrepreneur.com. Listen, learn, be Matzliach.